Hey guys, it's Danny here from the Initiative Order, and today I am joined with Kelsey of the Arcane Library.
Hello.
Hi. And we're going to be having a chat about a few things. We're going to chat about the Arcane Library and what it is, what you are.
All of it.
Is, all that. And we're going to be talking about, and I have it here, the Monstrous Lexicon.
Yay!
The new book that Kelsey has written with Matt of the Pickled Dragon.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's going to be a fun little conversation, I think.
Yeah, this will be fun. I'm excited. This is the best way to spend the Sunday that we're here.
Although we're recording on a Sunday, but it might not be a Sunday when it comes out.
No, that's true. You're right. Sorry if it's not Sunday, everyone.
You know, watch it on a Sunday. It gives you something to do.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So, let's start with, what is the Arcane Library? Tell us.
Sure. Yeah, the Arcane Library is I guess, technically a book publisher for Dungeons and Dragons. Although I've actually written some content for other gaming systems, but primarily we make D&D adventures and supplements and game aids for dungeon masters. So it's really just me, and then my girlfriend actually is the art director, so it's just us, and that's the Arcane Library in a nutshell.
Nice. How did you start? Where did it come from? The Arcane Library.
Where did it start? So initially I wanted to write D&D adventures for publication. And I kind of started off thinking, well, I want to try to publish something on the DMs Guild, because this was a few years ago and it was sort of just spinning up.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, okay, so why don't I try to write something and try to get it to as professional of a standard as I can, and then publish it and see how people react. And that's really where I got my start, is I wrote this adventure and I used the style of notes that I actually use for myself when I'm running a game, mm-hmm. which is a pretty different presentation style than I think a standard adventure.
Yeah.
It is a little bit different, and I wasn't sure if people were going to say, this is totally not what we want, this is not useful, blah, blah, blah. But I took the leap of faith and published that adventure, and people really liked it, and people wanted more. So I was like, all right, I'll keep writing.
It's a good way to get started.
Absolutely. It was a very fortunate, I don't know if, I think a lot of times I feel like I got really lucky, because I don't know how many people get to just have great success with the first adventure they publish. Yeah. So, but the thing is, you have to keep working too. So I actually rewrote that adventure 4 times before I published it. Completely, we're end to end 4 times. Wow. And I think that if you really persist at something, when you finally present it to the world, it's going to hopefully be worth its weight. So yeah, hopefully.
Well, you've done quite a few adventures now that you've got on the website and that, and I've played a couple.
Oh, wow.
And I have a couple that I'm planning on running. So
cool.
That'll be something we can all look out for, because I will be filming those as well.
Oh, exciting.
Yeah, I can't wait.
I hope no one dies.
Yeah, we'll see.
Or do I? You never know if I really, because I do feel bad when people get TPK'd. It's happened, so be careful.
I've been close to doing it as a dungeon master, and mm-hmm. it's the most daunting experience. I don't know if I was more nervous than the players. Yes,
because you see the ship sinking, and you're like, can I do anything to stop this? Did I do something wrong to cause this? It's very existential.
Yeah.
When you're killing your group.
But it puts you into that dilemma. It's like, do I let this continue and have them all die, or do I kind of railroad it away from death and that? And it's like, oh, what do you do?
No, this is so topical, because I was playing in a game where we got TPK'd last night, and so it's still fresh. But I will say the DM did an excellent job handling it. So we, I think it's, this, it's very down to the situation, but we got killed, but we didn't really get killed because we were actually, and we knew this, we were in a parallel dimension trying to do something. So we kind of knew the stakes and that death wouldn't necessarily be permanent, but it was still a bummer. But we're okay. So
that's all right then.
yeah, a little easy. So. Yeah.
So, where did the actual name the Arcane Library come from? This is a question I'd like to ask.
This is a great question. So this was I was trying to come up with a cool name that I thought would be very like D&D and sort of I wanted it to be a little bit magical because spellcasters have historically been like my favorite thing to play, and I just love the whole vibe of wizards and all the fiction and the history with the game of terrible magic, and so I wanted it to be something arcane, and then it took some fussing. I think I actually went through a handful of different name ideas before I really settled on that one. And it took me probably like a good week of brainstorming and coming back to it and thinking which one do I like the best.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that along with the logo too, it went through, actually, it's really, I might even have, the logo went through a really similar process where it was me being extremely fussy about details for like a week and a half. And then my girlfriend was like, well, why don't we just try a few storyboards and do it this way? And she came up with some genius ideas. But there was a bunch of me drawing things on paper for just, oh God, a full week. Like, here's some sample. Okay, and I'm a terrible artist, but this is like ideas of me trying to come up with like a vibe or a thing.
Okay.
And it's, yeah. I mean, can you even tell what some of these are? No way. But there are definitely eyes. And so that ended up playing into and I like the idea of a circular logo for some reason. So that's how that all came about.
Nice.
Yeah. I haven't ever showed anyone that, actually. So
I feel honored.
Oh, God. Yeah, no, I'm sorry with my terrible art. I'm like, here, look at this. Man.
So one of the main things, well, the main reason we're having this conversation is because you've released a book.
Mm-hmm.
This book.
Yay.
This.
Nice. Oh, thank you.
Very nice book. And I don't know, I kind of wanted to talk about every aspect of it, from where you began with it, how it started, how you got some of the ideas, and basically show off the creative process of how you got to this.
Right.
So how did it start? I mean, you wrote this with Matt of the Pickled Dragon, and how did you guys meet? How did you get talking? How did you come up with the idea of doing this?
Yeah.
How did it begin?
Gosh, okay, so Matt Rauscher of the Pickled Dragon is he is so personable, and he's just a very known name in the online community, especially for D&D. And I am actually more of a wallflower, so he reached out to me kind of just out of the blue, maybe a year and a half ago. I think just on Instagram or something, and he's like, oh, I see that you're running D&D games. I like your work. And we just really just started talking, chatting back and forth. And this was a few months before we were both headed to a gaming convention called GaryCon. And so it turned out, coincidentally, we were both going. So we were like, well, we have to meet up. Let's play some games while we're there. And then I ended up spending the majority of the con hanging out with him and his crew because he's just so much fun to hang out with. And he's just got a great, wonderful group of friends who came with him. So we played just a ton of games. Leading up to that, we had actually been kicking around some monster design ideas with each other for some games that we were planning to run at the con. So we kind of just segued into this sort of mutual friendship, being peers, to helping each other a little bit with content. And then at GaryCon, we said, well, why don't we write a book? Just like, I'd never written a full-length published book before, in fact. And Matt was like, we should write a book, maybe just like a small one about monsters, because we vibe so well when we're working on monsters together. And I was totally down with the idea. And at first, we were going to keep it kind of a small thing. We were going to do maybe 20 monsters. And originally, our plan was to do sort of jokey style, or sort of party annoying style monsters, like the Rust Monster, or we were joking around about making a toilet mimic, completely childish things like that, But we were like, well, why don't we make like some funny monsters, something people haven't seen before? And then as we started brainstorming, we started coming up with some just like really cool actual monster ideas, and we realized we wanted to make it maybe a larger and more serious work. So that's where we got our start. Long story short, that we planned it all at GaryCon last year. So
fair enough, yeah. Why is it? I mean, you said you kind of just came up with let's write a book. So was it the fact that you were talking about monsters together and designing monsters together? Is that how it led to being like a monster manual of sorts, rather than like just working on an adventure together?
yes, I think that is why, because that was our design experience together, sort of leading in. And I think also too, Matt and I have very different styles of adventure design. And I think there's a lot of like mutual respect, because he has a ton of really excellent like story and dialogue and sort of descriptive elements to his work. But presentation wise, it's almost the exact opposite of the way I write adventures. So I think we just sort of knew that writing an adventure together would be extremely hard to somehow make our styles mesh, which is okay, you know? And then I think that's the reason why monsters were a really easy collaborative work, because, you know, monsters are monsters. They're gonna have a stat block and a description, so you can't really go wrong with
a very generic kind of format for how you would present a monster.
Right, and that's true. Stat blocks are like monster stat blocks are almost universally going to be formatted the same way, and I'm not even sure if there's a much better way to approach them or a much different way. So I think whenever someone makes a monster, they kind of always use that same format. Although that is an interesting design challenge. Could monsters be presented differently?
Now I'm interesting to see.
Yeah, like what could be done to? Well, now I'm going to have to think about that.
This is a discussion for later.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm like furiously writing notes on the side here. But it's cool because I think Matt and I both get our adventure ideas largely by looking through monster books. So it's kind of funny because the number of ideas writing this book has spawned for me is like a lot. I don't even know if I can write all of it at this point. So
yeah, see, with like the way I present adventures and campaigns and stuff is like you say, looking at monsters and going, ooh, how can I put that into an adventure?
Yeah.
I do that, but I do it on top of that as well. I do it with terrain. So, because I enjoy painting terrain. I mean, there's like bits all around me and stuff.
Yeah.
Like cabinets over there and stuff in.
So cool.
But because I like to paint stuff and build it, I kind of think, oh, I've got this. What can I put this in?
Yeah.
So that's something I enjoy as well. And I will say that there is quite a few things in here that I'm going to try and write something to incorporate them into. So.
Oh, that's what I was hoping for with people, because I mean, I don't think nobody's ever going to use all of the monsters in it unless they, I mean, maybe, but but that for me is the whole reason I really wanted to write these, is to inspire adventure ideas. So I'm hoping that's the end goal for most people, or the end result, I should say.
Yeah. I mean, what was it like the actual writing process? Because you're based in New York.
Yes.
And Matt is based on the other side of the country.
He's pretty far away from here.
Yeah.
He's in the Midwest near Chicago, so he's like kind of smack in the middle of the country, which is pretty far from where I am, you know, as the bird flies. So we ended up doing this whole thing through a shared set of documents. Okay. And Matt himself is very organized, so we actually had like a Kanban board, if you've ever seen those, where you have like tasks on a little card and you can move them, which is the first time I'd ever used one, and then now I use one for every project. But it was really great because we could collaboratively see how each other was doing and make notes in there. And honestly, I think that I don't even know if it would have been easier to do it in person, given all the tools that we had. And we had a call every Monday night for about 6 months while we were writing it, just to talk about plans and things. So, and truly, we spent most of those calls just dorking around and like talking about our games and stuff. So, I don't know if we even truly needed every single one of them, but it was good for us to like be able to check in with each other.
Yeah. With doing it in that way, was it a case of you set each other separate tasks, or I mean, how much was it? I don't want to put this. Like, for example, a specific creature in that, would it be one person's task to do that creature and then another, or did you do them together? I mean, how did you meld?
Oh yeah. Okay. So good question. In fact, that initially what we were planning the monsters we wanted, we did that completely together. So we each kind of brainstormed some ideas on our own and then brought them to one of our more productive phone calls. And we kind of talked through each one and like what our bullet point ideas were. Just very like surface level, like, you know, I want to make a monster that's sort of like a hobgoblin but Arctic, you know. And that turned into the Draugr. So Matt and I talked about each one and kind of shared, you know, just based on the description and maybe even a name. Like maybe we thought, you know, we don't have a name for this one yet, but we do for this one. So we would discuss inspiration ideas between us for all of the monsters.
Yeah.
And then once we had done that, we actually had a huge pool of monsters. In fact, we cut some from the final pool. And then we split it up. So then he got a little more than half of them, actually, because Matt is prolific at writing and I'm just not as fast as he is. So I got a little under half of them, and we would just check in every week and try to get, you know, 3 or so done a week. Sometimes more, sometimes far less, especially for me. So I was the slow one in the entire process for sure. I was completely the slow one, but Matt's extremely patient, so that was excellent.
Okay, cool. Looking at the book, you have a lot of amazing artwork in here.
Thank you.
Now, how did the writing process for the monsters and the artwork, how did they gel together? Was it a case of you wrote it and then give a description to an artist to draw it, or did you get drawing ideas first and use those to dictate how the monster was created and written? What was the process there?
So with that, I would say the majority of the time we would be giving a pretty concrete description to the artists. And we actually worked with, I want to say 7 artists for this that we had either seen their work or it was really that we were looking around online and we were like, well, who's doing some really cool line art? Because we knew we wanted it to be a black and white sort of old school vibe. Which is a throwback. Matt and I have both been playing the game a long time, and we wanted to make something that was sort of a tribute to the community that really loves Gary Con, which is in the creator of the game's hometown. Yeah. So we're like, let's make something that we know is going to appeal to that audience, sort of as a nod to where the project got its roots from. And we sought out artists online mostly, and just reached out to them. And it's amazing how responsive artists are. If you say, hey, I love your work, I would love to pay you fairly for it, and, you know, get you into a book we're publishing. So I think every person we reached out to ended up jumping on board, and each person needed slightly different art direction. But by and large, artists, I think the ones that we worked with preferred to have something like a vision of ours. Yeah. You know, whether it was, I want a giant hermit crab with, you know, some kind of space-looking features, which is one of the creatures, or, you know, we want hobgoblins that are barbaric and almost like Asian inspiration, like Mongolian inspiration, and that was what they ran with. So,
cool.
Yeah, there was a couple. I think there were a very small minority of times where an artist actually pitched us a design idea that kind of came to them, and we in every case went with it because it turned out so cool, and it kind of sideways inspired some rules then for the monsters, like or at least some fluff, you know, like we're like, wow, this is so cool, we have to write this into the description now, you know. So it's cool. Mm-hmm.
I mean, was it just did you get art from a lot of different people, or was it just like the original? I mean, you said 7 people you spoke to, roughly.
Let me look. I have it right here. I want to count how many. Was it 7 artists? It was David, Jesse, J, 4, 5, 6, 7. It was. Yeah, it was all from 7 people who we worked with. So all of the art came from every single one of them.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Nice.
Including the cover. Actually, the cover is like, I think it's fun and chaotic and loud, which is
Yeah.
kind of like, that was ultimately what we wanted, because we wanted it to look very, very much like a fight in progress and almost like some chaos going on. And that cover piece, it's a wraparound cover, which we thought was really cool. And it was done by David Paul Seymour, who's a really neat designer. He's done some artwork for some really cool like musicians like Opeth and Slayer.
Nice.
Hmm. We were like, dang, this guy's for real.
Now, speaking of the cover art, I can see that there are 2 main characters fighting in this. And within the book, you do have a little section on these 2.
Yes.
And these are you and Matt, aren't they?
It is, absolutely.
So where did the idea come from to create your own NPC of yourself?
Oh man, it was so funny because we loved the idea, especially in recent D&D books, of there being sort of an NPC narrator. So you see that in like Volo's Guide and Mordenkainen's, and we were like, oh, this is actually a really cool way to pitch, story and even like subtle adventure hooks. And we thought that it's just a little more, I mean, in our opinion, endearing to have a person telling you rather than just game text. So we ended up doing it that way. And I think it's funny because Matt and I both made NPCs who were sort of representative of ourselves. And we didn't try to steer away from that because we like the idea of feeling like we're sort of in the story. Maybe that's semi-self-indulgent, but it was too funny. We had to do it. So
it's cool. It's a nice little touch.
The funny bit is that the character who represents who I wrote the voice for, Rin, it is my girlfriend who did her art, and she actually had to take a picture of me posing to get the design right, and so it's almost straight up me with like some slight tweaks to my face,
Cool.
Oh man, it was funny.
Is it a character you've ever played?
Actually, no, which is interesting. It is not. And then following writing this, I've sort of been sneaking references to her into other like canon stuff I've been writing for the Arcane library. So she might appear a few more times, like as a little Easter egg for people.
I'm surprised it's not like a nod to a character you may have played previously in an adventure.
Well, in fact, it is a bit, because my very first D&D character was an elf wizard. So she is actually all the qualities of that character sort of brought forward into something slightly more original. Mm-hmm. And I actually don't know where Matt got the idea for Borg from, except that I know he was inspired by some... Gosh, I can't remember now the movie, but there was a character who has sort of a similar look to Borg that he really was like, that's how he has to look. And I think he embraced the idea of Borg being a cranky, like, old man, because Matt sometimes likes to pitch himself as that, even though he's far from it. So, mm-hmm.
How did you come up with because you've, rather than it just being monsters and a straight up monster manual, you've got playable races that you've put in. Mm-hmm. So how did you come up with the choices you put in here?
Yes, well, so we realized that we wanted something to also be appealing to people who don't DM but rather play. And some of the monsters we had been coming up with, we said, well, these would make really fun playable races. I mean, I think all of them except one is actually also a set of monsters in the book.
Yeah.
And so we just decided to convert them into playable races and give that as sort of a fun option for people who are much more into playing. And it's fun. I had never designed a playable race before, so I was actually a little bit, like, oh gosh, I have to, how am I going to do this? I've never done this. It's going to be scary and hard, but it's actually not so bad. I think designing a class would be by far the hardest for the game. And surprisingly, playable races, I think, are not too bad. I was expecting it to be a lot scarier.
like I've had a good read through and that, and the amount of like backstory and history to the races that you've put in is pretty amazing, really. Looking at it.
It's here's an insider secret that Matt designed the Minotaurs, and he had 11 pages of backstory that he cut down into what's in the book now, which is like maybe a page and a half, I think. Because he just went all in. He was like, he's actually been using those Minotaurs in his game world for years, so he just had a huge backlog of tons of story stuff and all that. So I'm amazed that he cut it down to that size, knowing how big it was. Good job, Matt.
Yeah, good job. That's crazy.
So it's heartbreaking to cut that much material.
Imagine. I mean, was there a lot of cutting that you did, like material-wise, within the book?
So I think in his case, probably more than me, because he incorporated a lot more previously homebrewed stuff that he had. So I was actually designing mostly everything like new from scratch. Like none of it had appeared in my game world previously. Whereas Matt was pulling from, like what's a good example? I will think of one, but the Rotten Root is this giant evil tree monster. And Matt had actually designed that for a 3rd edition game.
Oh, wow. Yeah,
and so we sort of retooled it quite a bit and then brought it forward into 5th edition and cut a ton of the backstory. We just had to do it. This is so funny. I say this all the time, but I think that writing is actually cutting. That's where it really gets down to like the tough decisions and the hard things. So,
yeah, I would agree with that. I've written like small adventures and one shots for friends in the past and that, and you'll write like 1,000 pages and it's crazy and that, and you look back and you go, well, get rid of that. They don't need any of that. They don't need that. And then it comes to play it, and it's like right, I reduced it down to a 10-page one shot, and you play it, and 3 hours later you're still on page 2.
Exactly.
You're like,
Yep.
It's like I should have cut this down a little bit more.
I know, and it's funny because I feel like that all of that excess writing is like necessary for you to organize your own ideas sometimes. But then where do you put it when you cut it? It's so sad. I have a graveyard document where I like put cuts that I really loved writing, but that just have to go. They're still there. I can go look at them whenever I want, but I usually don't. But they are there. So, man.
Yeah. I mean, with the monster design in here, like you've got backstory and little bits of history and that with each of them. Was that an easy thing to do? Was it a hard thing to do? I mean, because obviously we're talking about overwriting and cutting down on that. But when, like we were saying, how monster design, you can kind of get that generic template of how to write it. What was it like putting your spin on things with your own monsters into that?
Yes. So that, I mean, the monsters always come in 2 very distinct design parts, which is, and I usually start with the math side, like the stat block, and we always know what level we're aiming for before we start, which really helps. That helps you gauge the power level of the monster, and that came from the initial design ideas, like, oh, we want this to be pretty tough, oh, we want that to be pretty weak. Nothing more complex than that, and so I always design the stats first. And then oftentimes, especially when I'm doing like special abilities or I guess they're called traits now in 5th edition. When I'm designing traits, that's kind of where I start to get inspired for more concrete backstory. Because I'm like, well, okay, I want this creature to have a really aggressive surprise attack, lunge-in style thing. So then that will actually start to play into the descriptive text that I write after the fact.
Yeah.
And I actually don't know if I think Matt might actually do it in reverse. I think he does the stats last, which is, again, the complete opposite of the way I do things, yet we work so well together. So it really, I always find the flavor text bit to be harder because it just isn't, there's not like a concrete set of steps you follow to get to an end result. It's much more nebulous and almost always results in you needing to rewrite and cut a bit, whereas with stats, it's just math. So, yeah.
Now, speaking of monster level and challenge ratings, there's quite a good mix in the book, I saw, but there is one that I do want to ask some questions about, and
yes,
I will show you rather than say anything.
Oh, Typhon, yes.
Tell me about this one, because I saw this and I was like, oh damn.
I know. We were like, well, we want to make something as crazy as we possibly can. This just because, and I think this Typhon was originally Matt's concept and design, and I think he just wanted to challenge himself and like go all out and write something as disastrously bad as he could think of, and almost like test the limits of the game itself and like the upper boundaries of whether we can actually successfully design something that's CR30. And we discovered in doing that truly like the difference between a low 20 and a high 20 or 30 CR creature is just like an exponential increase in damage output. Like that's really what it is. So Typhon is just a damage machine. I mean, he just blows things up, and that's how we got him to be that high of a level. That was the only way we could do it. So because it's like after a certain point, like a huge amount of HP is sort of diminishing value on a creature. Yeah. It's really about trying to crank up the damage to like actually absurd levels. Like we were laughing when we were designing it. Like this is a ridiculous amount of damage, and we had to take it to supreme ridiculous to get it to calculate out to CR30.
Yeah, it's looking at the stats and the attacks. It is ridiculous.
It totally is. It totally but it's a goal to aspire to for people, I guess. Yeah. We actually, in playtesting, we had people make high level characters to test against it. And then we had to start having people use monsters against Typhon to really get a read on like how, because characters can only get so powerful before like I guess there are no characters up to 30th level at this point. So they kind of cap out at 20, and then it's not always enough. So we ended up having people like play testing Tiamat, like Tiamat versus Typhon, who would win, just to try to gauge it, you know? So it was pretty funny.
That's cool. What was the play testing like? How did it go?
Yes, so Matt is again a prolific writer and dungeon master, so he's running like several weekly groups, and he would usually test all of the monsters against his groups in just these sort of like gauntlet style games where there wasn't even really a story. We would just be like, all right, we're fighting monsters today, and I did that to a certain extent with my groups, but I kind of worked them into the actual stories and adventure paths we were on. So I didn't get as much of a high output on playtesting as Matt did, but like all in all, we kind of like shared the playtesting back and forth a bit, all just in live games, really. So
yeah, okay, that's cool. The playtesting was it a long drawn out process? I mean, how long from start to finish? How long did it take to write the book?
It took, I think it took 6 months. Wait, we started in May or June, and then finished right at the end of October. So May, June, July, August, September, October. Yeah, 6 months. So yeah, and it truly, playtesting was actually not what took the longest. And you would think so, because you would think there'd be like, you play test it and then you bring it back and change it, and then you have to play test it again. But our play testing was really just to make sure that the monster did what we wanted it to do.
Yeah.
You know, and that there were no glaring issues with it. Because like everybody's mileage will vary with these. It really depends on so many factors at the table besides just the monster itself. So our goal was just to make sure, is this reasonably appropriate for characters of this level? And does it do the things and have the vibe that we planned when we designed it? You know, and then if not, we would tweak it a bit. But in most cases, we only had to make very minor changes. Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Yeah.
So start to finish 6 months. When did you decide that it was finished? I mean, Have you ever decided that it was actually finished?
Oh, I don't think it's ever really finished because, going back through, you always spot one little thing you want to change, or you're like, oh, there's a typo there. Like I mean, even Wizards of the Coast has typos, so I'm not too mad about that. But I think we feel good about the monster design. Like, I think we brought every monster to completion, and we're happy about them. But I will always look back through the book and think like, oh, I could have tightened the writing, right there. So you just have to tell yourself to stop and say, okay, it's good. It's good enough. So we're going to get it out into the world now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Speaking of getting it out into the world, what made you, I mean, I have it here in my hand. What made you go for an actual print rather than just say like a PDF on the DM's Guild and that sort of publishing?
Yeah, I guess just because we wanted to have a dang book. We were like, we want to make a book. Like, because I myself really value PDFs and like the digital world of D&D. That's actually like 95% of what I do is embracing that.
Yeah.
But in this case, I think we just, it's so rare. So you don't always get the opportunity to just make an actual real book. And doing it on your own in particular would be very challenging because Matt and we split the costs of producing the book. So it was sort of a rare opportunity to do something like that, and we just wanted to take advantage of it. Mm-hmm.
It has that old school feel as well, like before technology, when everything was paper. It like along with the artwork and that, it does take it back to like the old days of D&D.
Yeah, exactly. Well. That's 100% what we were trying to do. So we thought that was like an essential part of it, was having a paperback version and hardcover and having it have that, that line art and sort of that old school presentation. Yeah. So
it's good.
I'm glad you picked up on that.
Yeah. What else to say? What else to ask? I mean, apart from going through every single monster and getting the ins and outs.
Gosh.
I mean, it's been out. How long's it been out now?
It's been out since, I think, probably mid-November.
November.
Yeah, mid-November.
Let's say, so you've had 3 months of it out.
Yeah.
How do you feel it's been received publicly? Like,
I am just very happy to say that I think people have really appreciated it and altogether have found the content to be really useful and enjoyable. And it's, whenever you put something out into the world, there's going to be, generally speaking, a lot of people who are supportive of it, and then like a small minority of people who just like don't like it, and you can't please everybody. So that's just something that's par for the course in publishing. But I mean, by and large, people have been really cool about saying, oh, I used this monster last night, or like, oh, I made a Gruleshi character, I'm so excited. And that's been really just wonderful to hear. And it's been selling really well, which we also were, I mean, I don't want to say we're surprised by that because we were hoping it would sell well, but we're just really gratified to see that it has some sticking power and that people are really enjoying the book and actually buying it.
Yeah. I mean, looking online on the different social media and that, I mean, I've seen nothing but positivity for it, which is fantastic and that. I mean, with it being, because like you say, this is your first collaborative piece, it must have been nervous when you hit that print button and it's there, it's out.
Yeah,
it's gonna be scary.
A little bit, and then like Matt and I, we definitely had to make some compromises both with each other and with what we were able to do, with the layout and stuff. Like Matt and I both would have rather had each monster have a page break and like start on its own page.
Yeah.
But that also would have made the size of the book go up by at least a third, and then it would have jumped into another price category for people. So those were all kind of like behind the scenes painful decisions we had to make that we knew were going to result in some people saying like, oh, I don't like this. And that's, again, par for the course. We knew it was going to happen. And I don't think it's anything that I myself would be terribly mad about. So, but yeah, there's always like a level of compromise with a physical product that you just have to embrace. That was the challenge. That was our main challenge, was like, how can we get this to fit within what we're able to achieve?
Yeah.
But we did it, dang it.
You did, and it is here. Everyone to see and to buy, to own.
Yeah.
What's next? I mean, we have this. What's next to come?
Gosh, I Well, at least for the Arcane Library, I am definitely going to buckle down writing some adventures. It's been really too long since I published a full-length adventure. So I have my little notebook actually right here, and it's full of some ideas I'm excited about. I may include some monsters from the lexicon. Matt and I have both kind of decided that we're completely cool with republishing bits of the lexicon into other adventures, because we want to use the monsters. They're so cool. We want to actually write adventures about them. So that's to come. And I'm also writing some game material for Index Card RPG, which is a pretty cool sort of homebrew, do-it-yourself version of D&D. And I've been writing some content with Runehammer, the publisher of that. So that's been really fun too.
Nice.
We got a secret project in the works. I can't say anything else except that, but I'm excited about it. It's definitely up my alley. I'll say that. So
cool. Do you feel doing this book has kind of opened the door for more collaborative stuff for you?
I think so. I think what it really did was prove that I think I can do more than I thought I could, maybe, as a writer.
Yeah.
Because you never think, even now looking at it, I'm like, geez, it's a real book, like we really just sat down and wrote that thing. But it doesn't, when you're in the process of writing it, it doesn't look like a book to you. And you just put in your ritual amount of work on it every day or every week. And people always say, every long journey starts with one step. And I was like, yeah, whatever, one step, okay. But it really is true. And then it's kind of proven that we can really write a full-length book and publish it. And that inspired me to take on more ambitious projects, I think.
Nice. Yeah.
Which monster was your favorite monster?
Ooh.
No pressure.
No pressure. Let me find it. I need to find it because I don't want to butcher the name.
Oh, it's okay. Some of them are hard to pronounce. I even mess it up sometimes. I was like, Matt, that Graugrat, and he's like, the Grugatch.
That's always been like one of the hardest things for me is pronunciation.
I know.
Within the monster realm, because it's like people add letters for the sake of adding letters, I feel sometimes.
Absolutely.
But it's I've got it here. It's the Scatheon.
Oh, that was the one that was my high level monster. I'm so happy to hear you like that guy. He was one of the very, very few where the artist's art actually changed the design of the monster. Yeah, because I didn't originally think of putting a skull as its carapace. But then when I saw that as the design that the artist was batting around with us, I was like, oh my god, this is so cool. Like, it probably lives in the skulls of dead gods and like outer space, and like it was very inspiring. So
just for everyone to see, is this little guy. I say little.
He could be little, but really he's maybe a baby one is pretty little, but they can also be very, very big. So
yeah. When I read that one, I was just like, that just sounds crazy.
Yay! And I say my design, Matt and I co-designed literally every single monster, so I just cranked out the math on that one. So
it's
cool.
It's fun. Definitely, there's loads. There's so. I mean, when you look at the book and that, and you look at the size and everything, you think, but then you open it, and you're like, there is just so much in here.
Yay!
And it's just like, wow.
Cool.
It's just like it's going to take a good few reads to get through everything and to see everything, but like it's just so well produced.
Thank you.
We can't praise it enough.
That's so good to hear, and I'm hoping it's a book that people come back to for ideas over and over.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool.
So I'm going to tell everyone now. Monstrous Lexicon by Matt and Kelsey of Pickled Dragon and the Arcane Library. Check it out. Grab a copy. It's on Amazon. Is it on your website?
It's just on Amazon for now,
Just
actually.
Amazon for now.
Yeah, because I can't link to it through my website. It's like
there'll be a link down below for UK viewers because we're in the UK.
Cool.
And make sure you check out the Arcane Library. on all the social media, which again is down below. I'm going to point it that way because it should be the middle. Yeah.
Cool.
Make sure.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for talking to us. It's been fun. It's been different for me to do this, to you, and yeah.
Cool. Well, normally what you do is run great games, so I hope you have some good games coming up, and I'm looking forward to seeing them. So
yes, there will be, and we will definitely be filming one of your Arcane Library adventures. So that's something for the viewers to check out. Hopefully, I don't butcher it.
No, there's no. It's guidelines, not rules. You know, like the best adaptations of my adventures are the ones that don't go as planned. Those always turn out to be the most fun. So.
It's all, yeah, exactly. I mean, you write an adventure and you're like, let's go that way, and it goes that way, and it turns out into an even better one.
Yes, exactly. I always say good to that. That should happen. So, cool.
So, we'll leave it there and say bye.
All right.
Yeah, thank you for watching, everyone.
Thank you.
Make sure you check all Kelsey's work out. It's all linked down below. And we'll see you guys next time.
Bye.